My name is Elowen, and I just turned 18. At my birthday party last night, my dad pulled me aside and whispered, "When this is all over, you're going to sign some papers for Uncle Harlan. It's just a formality." I smiled and nodded. Then I walked into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and quietly transferred my entire multi-million-dollar inheritance from my grandparents into an irrevocable trust. Just as a precaution, the next morning my parents and my younger sister woke up to discover that the lake cabin, the savings, the investment portfolios, everything was locked behind a legal wall they couldn't touch. My dad went pale. My uncle, who had already signed a deal to sell a property that never belonged to him, scrambled to call a lawyer. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit the like button and subscribe. Leave your city and local time down below in the comments. I love seeing where you guys are listening from. Now, let me take you back 6 years to a summer at Blackwood Lake when my grandfather said something I didn't truly understand. Until last night. The summer I turned 12, my grandpa Silas picked me up in his beat-up Chevy truck and drove me 40 minutes out to Blackwood Lake. The cabin sits back from the water, surrounded by eastern white pines so tall they block out the late afternoon sun. The front porch sags on one side. The screen door doesn't quite latch. The whole place smells like wood smoke, old hardbacks, and something faintly sweet I've never been able to put my finger on. "Grab the other end," Grandpa said, lifting a heavy cedar split rail. I did. We spent the entire morning replacing 3 rotted fence posts on the south property line. He didn't rush me. He showed me how to check for soft spots in the wood by pressing my thumb into the grain. "If it gives, it's done for," he told me. Inside, Grandma Beatrix had sweet iced tea and 2 turkey sandwiches waiting on the kitchen table, the exact same oak table Grandpa built with his own 2 hands. The year they got married. She was reading out on the porch when I walked out, and she patted the wicker chair next to her. We sat there, watching the lake, until the light turned the color of spun gold. "This cabin stays in the family," Grandpa told me that afternoon, wiping sawdust off his calloused hands. "But family isn't always blood, Elowen. Family is who shows up." I didn't completely understand what he meant. I was 12. I thought he was just being poetic. He wasn't. All that summer, I went back to Blackwood Lake every single weekend. I learned where the water heater leaked, which bedroom window always stuck, and how to bleed the baseboard radiators. In October, Grandma taught me to organize the bookshelves by color because, she said, it makes the room feel warmer. Grandpa showed me the property line markers, heavy iron stakes he had driven into the paste, earth himself. I didn't know it then, but my grandfather was already speaking with a lawyer. Specifically about this piece of land. Specifically about me. Back home in Oak Creek, the air always felt different. Our house was fine. 3 bedrooms, a front lawn that constantly needed mowing, and an attached garage my dad, Vance, used as a home office for his struggling hardware supply business. It was fine, but not warm. Just fine. My sister Sutton was 10 and had the biggest bedroom. They'd remodeled it last spring. Lavender walls and a designer desk lamp that cost more than my entire bookshelf. My room still had the beige carpet from the previous owners. At dinner, my dad brought up the cabin. "Dad's place is just sitting there. Depreciating," Vance said, aggressively cutting into his steak. "The property, taxes alone are bleeding them dry. We should sell it, reinvest the capital." My mom, Lorelei, nodded. "It makes financial sense." Grandpa said the cabin stays in the family. I piped up. Vance laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but worse, a dismissive one. "You were 12? Elowen. He was just humoring you. Nobody asked me anything else." The conversation shifted to Sutton's debate team. Trophy. She was a regional finalist. Very impressive. Lorelei had already framed the certificate. I had won the district science fair 2 weeks prior. The blue ribbon was still crumpled at the bottom of my backpack. After dinner, I was clearing the plates. Half hidden under a grocery list on the plates. Kitchen Island was a glossy brochure. Apex Ridge Developments. Premium lakefront. Lots. Now acquiring. There was a handwritten phone number scribbled in the blow. Margin. It wasn't my dad's handwriting. I put the brochure back exactly where I found it. Upstairs, I sat on my bed and thought about Grandpa's kitchen table. The one he built. The one where Grandma always placed my sandwich without asking what I wanted, because she already knew. I thought about the glossy brochure. Downstairs, somebody was already measuring my grandparents' home in dollar signs. Grandpa Silas died 2 years later. I was 14. The funeral was on a dreary Tuesday. Slate gray sky, wet grass, folding chairs sinking into the turf. I sat. In the second row, clutching his frayed blue plaid handkerchief that smelled faintly of pine sap. At the reception, I noticed Vance and his brother, Uncle Harlan, standing by the fay. Dessert table. They weren't eating, they were speaking in hushed tones. Harlan had a manila folder tucked under his arm. Vance kept nodding. I caught one. Sentence from Harlan. We need to move on this before probate gets messy. They were talking about selling the cabin at his funeral. I didn't say anything. I was 14. I had no power, no voice, and absolutely no idea that my grandfather had already anticipated this exact moment. 2 more years passed. I was 16. Grandma Beatrix got sick in March and faded by June. She held my hand the last time I visited her in hospice. Her grip was surprisingly strong. The cabin is yours, Elowen, she whispered, her breath ragged. Don't let them take it from you. Promise me. I promise, Grandma. She squeezed my hand once and closed her eyes. After the funeral, another gray day. The exact same sinking folding chairs Vance sat at our kitchen table inside, looking at Lorelei. Well, now we can finally settle the estate. He said it with a profound sense of relief, like a heavy burden had been lifted. That same afternoon, Uncle Harlan called. I heard Vance on the phone in the garage, pacing back and forth. Yeah, no, I agree. Let's get the ball rolling. His voice was lighter than it had been in weeks. I stood in the hallway holding a glass of ice water, and a realization settled, heavily into my chest like a stone. My grandmother's death wasn't a loss to them. It was a green light. I didn't cry that night. I made a different kind of decision, even though I didn't know how to act on it yet. Between the ages of 16 and almost 18, cabin became my silent rebellion. Every Saturday morning, I drove out to Blackwood Lake in the beat-up used Honda Civic I bought with babysitting money. I patched the porch screens. I replaced the weather stripping on the back door. I swept the pine needles off the roof because Grandpa had taught me that's how leaks start. At home, the vocabulary shifted. The cabin stopped being Grandpa's place and started being the family asset. Vance said it at dinner like it had always been a corporate holding. Uncle Harlan came around more often now, every other Sunday, sometimes carrying those manila folders, sometimes with his laptop open, to MLS real estate listings. I tried to push back once. What about what Grandma wanted? She told me she wanted me to keep it. Lorelei gently set her fork down, the exact same way she did before correcting Sutton's homework. Your grandmother was very sentimental at the end, honey. This is business. Business. That was the word they used for everything that used to be love. When I was 17, Vance started getting more direct. When you turn 18, we're going to get this settled as a family. The way he said family, I knew he meant his way. One brisk November afternoon, alone at the cabin, I was emptying out the hallway. Linen closet, stuffed all the way in the back, behind a stack of mothballed patchwork quilts, I found a sealed envelope with Grandma Beatrix's handwriting. My name was on the front. Inside was a single business card, Rosalind Sterling, attorney at law. Beneath, her name, printed in fine, elegant font, the Silas and Beatrix Family Trust. My hands shook, not from fear, but from profound recognition. Grandma had hidden this here specifically for me to find. She knew I would be the one to clean out the closets, not Vance, not Harlan. I tucked the card into my wallet. I didn't call yet. Not yet. 3 months before my 18th birthday, Rosalind Sterling called me first. The call came on a Thursday afternoon in February. I was in my bedroom grinding through AP Calculus homework when my phone lit up with an unknown local area code. Elowen, this is Rosalind Sterling. I was your grandparents' attorney. Her voice was sharp, professional, and careful, like someone who had rehearsed the opening line. I need to speak with you before your birthday. There are things you need to know, and the clock is ticking. She told me to meet her the following Saturday at her downtown office. Alone. I went. Rosalind Sterling was a woman in her late 50s, with striking silver hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Her office was compact, meticulously organized, and smelled of roasted coffee and legal parchment. She sat across from me and opened a thick binder. Your grandparents retained me 6 years ago, she said flatly. They established an irrevocable trust, the lake cabin, a high-yield savings account, and a mutual fund portfolio. Total asset value is approximately $2.1 million. Everything is held securely within the trust, and you, Elowen, are the sole beneficiary. The room felt like it tilted a few degrees. My grandparents left me everything. They transferred it all into the trust while they were still alive. Legally, it never entered their estate. It completely bypassed probate. My dad and my uncle had absolutely zero legal claim to any of it. She slid a document across the mahogany desk, a summary of the trust. My name was on the second line. The title to the cabin was recorded under the trust with the county clerk office 6 years ago. My dad doesn't know? I whispered. Rosalind paused, adjusting her glasses. Your grandfather said, and I quote, "My boys will sell that cabin before the funeral flowers even wilt." The room went dead silent. I stared at the paper with my name on it. Is there something else? Rosalind leaned forward. Someone has been making inquiries at the county recorder's office about the cabin's title over the last month. I started paying microscopic attention after that meeting. Not acting. Suspiciously, just existing quietly. The following Sunday, Uncle Harlan came. Over for dinner. Afterward, he and Vance vanished into the garage. The door was cracked, not enough to see through, but just enough to hear Harlan's voice. I already signed the purchase agreement with Apex Ridge for $450K. But we need a clean title before closing, Vance. How do we clean it up? Vance asked. Quitclaim deed. Dad's gone, mom's gone. We are the legal next of kin. We sign the property over to ourselves, record it, and sell it. Is that legal? It's a standard familial real estate transfer. The clerk isn't going to blink. Twice. A pause. Then Vance lowered his voice. What about Elowin? My chest tightened. Harlan's answer was quick, practiced. She's 17. She can't legally do anything. And by the time she turns 18, the sale will have already closed. Done deal. She'll throw a tantrum, and she'll get over it. We'll cut her a check for $50,000 for college. She should be on her knees thanking us. I backed away from the garage door. My hands were ice cold. Uncle Harlan had already signed a purchase agreement. He promised an Apex Ridge developer a $450,000 piece of property he didn't own on land held in a trust he didn't know existed. That night, I sat on my bed and texted Rosalind 2 words. They're accelerating. Her reply came 3 minutes later. I expected as much. Come see me Saturday. We'll prepare everything. I locked my phone and stared at the ceiling. In the next room, Sutton was watching Netflix, giggling at a sitcom. Downstairs, my parents were loading the dishwasher, chatting about weekend plans as if they weren't plotting to rob me, blind. And out in the garage, tucked inside Harlan's manila folder, was a binding corporate contract that was entirely worthless. He just didn't know it. Yet, on Saturday, in Rosalind's office, she mapped out a timeline on a yellow legal pad, drawing sharp lines between dates like a battlefield tactician. The cabin's title is already protected under the trust. If Harlan tries to file a quitclaim deed, the county clerk should reject it because the chain of title won't match. The property hasn't been in your grandparents' personal names for 6 years. But if he gets creative files, an affidavit of heirship, maybe uses a sketchy death certificate, he could create a cloud on the title. It wouldn't grant him ownership, but it could lock the property up in expensive civil litigation for years. So I have to strike first, I said. You have to strike precisely, she corrected, tapping the calendar. The exact millisecond you turn 18, you become a legal adult. You can formally execute your role as the successor beneficiary. Once you sign the acceptance forms, I will file a lis pendens, a formal public notice of pending litigation and legal interest at the county recorder's office the second they open the next morning. What does that do? It completely freezes the title. No one can sell, transfer, or place a lien on the property while a lis pendens is active. If they've already submitted fraudulent paperwork, it flags it immediately. The chain of title will clearly show the trust established 6 years ago, not your father or uncle. Any conflicting documents get bounced back. I looked down at the signature line waiting for me. My grandparents' names were printed right above mine. Rosalind's voice softened, losing its courtroom edge. This isn't a trap. Elowin, this is your grandfather's final gift to you. You just had to survive, long enough to be old enough to accept it. I drove home. Vance was in the kitchen, practically buzzing with fake energy. Great news, kiddo. I'm throwing you a huge birthday party. The whole extended family, next Saturday night. It's the big one. 18. He beamed. Lorelei beamed. I smiled back. My dad was planning my birthday party. My uncle was planning to fence my grandmother's cabin to corporate developers. And I was sitting at the kitchen island, smiling, because in 9 days, I was going to let them believe everything was going exactly according to their master plan. I'll be honest with you guys. Sitting in my childhood bedroom those nights, knowing the absolute hurricane that was coming, was the hardest thing I've ever done. A part of me wanted to march downstairs and just scream, I know, everything. But Rosalind was right. If I tipped my hand, they would find a slimy legal loophole to maneuver around it. So, I swallowed my anger and waited. Let me ask you guys something. Have you ever had to stay dead silent to protect yourself, even when every fiber of your being wanted to scream? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button because this story is about to blow up. 5 days before my birthday, my mom sat next to me on the living room sofa. She was using her let's talk like adults voice. Silky, practiced, heavily, rehearsed. Now that you're almost 18, Lorelai started, placing a hand on my knee. There are some grown-up family decisions we need to make together. Together. The word landed like a lead balloon. The cabin is a financial black hole, she continued smoothly. Property taxes, homeowners insurance, constant upkeep. Your father's business is drowning. Elowen, if we sell the property, we can clear the bank debt and create a solid college fund for you and Sutton, for both of you. Grandma wanted me to keep it, I said softly. Lorelai's expression flickered, a micro-expression of pure annoyance, quickly, masked by a sympathetic sigh. Your grandmother was lovely, but she was heavily medicated and sentimental at the end, Elowen. Sentimentality doesn't pay the IRS. Vance walked in right on cue. I wondered if they had staged it. I already talked to a buyer, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Great price. Highly motivated. Who's the buyer? I asked innocently. He blinked, caught off guard. A real estate development firm. Harlan knows the brokers. What's the firm's name? A longer pause. Apex. Ridge, I think? They're reputable. I didn't push. I'll think about it, I said. Vance slapped the doorframe happily. That's my girl. He walked off looking incredibly smug, like a guy who just closed $1 million pitch. Later that night, Sutton knocked on my door. She was in her pajamas, her hair wrapped in a wet towel. Hey, she murmured, sitting on the edge of my bed and picking at a loose thread on my comforter. Mom and Dad keep whispering about the lake house after you go to sleep. She shot me a sideways glance. They sound weird, like excited, but panicked. Is something bad happening? I pulled my blanket over my feet. Don't worry about it, Sutton. It's handled. She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. I had told my parents I would think about it. To them, a maybe wasn't a yes, which meant they were going to turn the screws tighter. 3 days before my birthday, Uncle Harlan showed up unannounced. He cornered me in the driveway as I was bringing in groceries. He was wearing an expensive quarter-zip sweater, flashing his $1 million realtor smile, leaning casually against his luxury SUV like he just happened to be in the neighborhood. Harlan was a shark. Nothing he did was accidental. Hey, kiddo, got a second? Just want to chat, Uncle to niece? We sat on the front porch steps. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, playing the confidant. Here's the reality, Elowen. That lakefront lot? Just the dirt is worth $450K right now. I can leverage my contacts to get us a phenomenal deal with a cash buyer. Quick 3-0, day close, clean paperwork. And what do I get out of this? I asked, staring straight ahead. 50 grand. Liquid cash, direct deposit for college. I let the number hang in the crisp autumn air. 50,000 out of 4. 150,000. Harlan smiled like he'd just told a brilliant joke. You're turning 18, Elowen. 50 G's is life-changing money for a kid your age. Most teenagers would be doing backflips right now. Whose name is on the deed, Uncle Harlan? His smile locked rigidly in place for a fraction of a second. A flash of cold calculation behind his eyes. Then the mask slipped back on. It was your grandparents. But since they passed, it defaults to your dad and me as the legal next of kin. That's not how estate law works. I knew it. He definitely knew it. He sold houses for a living. But he was betting his entire commission that an 8-year-old girl wouldn't know the difference. I'll think about it, I repeated. Harlan stood up and dusted off his designer jeans. Don't overthink this, Elowen. Windows of opportunity like this close fast. He walked to his car. Before he even hit the end of our street, he was already on his Bluetooth. I could see his jaw moving frantically through the driver's side window. That night, I texted Rosalind again. They're rushing it. She replied, hold the line. 3 more days. 3 more days. I could survive 3 days. The night before my birthday, I drove out to the cabin alone. The back roads were empty. Blackwood Lake looked like a sheet of black glass under a crescent moon, the pines along the shoreline standing like sentinels against the sky. I parked. In the gravel turnaround, Grandpa had graded himself. I walked up the porch. Steps. The second one still groaned under my weight and sat in the wicker chair, next to his. The air smelled like incoming rain and pine resin. I opened my laptop and checked my email. Rosalind had sent the secure DocuSign packet, the successor, beneficiary acceptance form, the formal trust affirmation, a one-page legal summary of the trust parameters. All perfectly formatted, highlighted with digital flags just waiting for one thing, my signature. At midnight, I read every single document twice. Then I closed my laptop and listened to the water lapping against the dock. Grandpa used to sit in this exact spot and tell me, patience isn't weakness. Eloin, it's knowing the exact moment to strike. I always thought he was talking about catching largemouth bass. The tears came out of nowhere. Not a dramatic breakdown, just a silent, heavy overflow that I let wash over me. I cried because I wished my reality was different. I wished Vance had been the kind of father who took me fishing on this lake instead of calculating its per square foot resale value. I wished Lorelei had asked me what I wanted for my future instead of lecturing me about practicality. I wished I didn't have to digitally sign a terrifying stack of legal documents at midnight, just to protect myself from the people whose biological job was to protect me. But wishes don't hold up in civil court. Trust documents do. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my hoodie, locked the cabin deadbolt, drove home, crawled into my childhood bed, and set my alarm for 11:45 p.m. In 6 hours, I would turn 18. In 7, my family would discover that the cabin was never theirs for the taking. 11:50 p.m. My bedroom door was locked. The house was dead quiet. Vance and Lorelei had gone to sleep an hour ago, and Sutton's lights had been out since 10. I opened my laptop and joined the secure Zoom link. Rosalind appeared on screen from her home office, reading glasses on, a massive stack of files illuminated by a brass desk lamp. Are you ready, Eloin? I'm ready. When the clock strikes midnight, you are a legal adult in the eyes of the state of New York in every capacity that matters. I'll walk you through the execution. She reviewed everything one last time, her voice crisp and surgical. At exactly 12:01 a.m., I digitally signed the successor beneficiary acceptance form, a single page confirming that I was formally taking possession of the irrevocable trust my grandparents built. From that exact second forward, every single financial and legal decision regarding the trust's assets had to go through me and Rosalind as co-trustees. All right, Rosalind said, leaning back. First thing tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Sharp, I will walk into the county clerk's office and record the lis pendens. It's a blaring public siren stating there is an active legal interest in the play, property. Once the clerk stamps it, the title is frozen in carbonite. No one can mortgage it, sell it, or transfer it. And what if they try to file something? I asked, my heart hammering. Then whatever they submit gets immediately red flagged. The official chain of title will pull up the trust recorded 6 years ago, not your father's name. Any fraudulent paperwork will be utterly useless. I stared at the screen, at the digital confirmation receipt. Rosalind smiled softly. This isn't a trick, Eloin. It's your grandfather's final move. You just had to be old enough to play it. The clock on my MacBook ticked to 12:03 a.m. I was 18. I was the legal successor to the Silas and Beatrix family trust. And downstairs in the garage, my uncle's quitclaim deed was already a dead piece of paper. He was going to find out in exactly 9 hours. Across town, in the kitchen of his leased luxury duplex, Uncle Harlan was printing documents. I didn't know this at the exact moment. I pieced the timeline together weeks later from what the county clerk told Rosalind and what Vance eventually confessed during one of our ugliest arguments. But here's exactly what went down in the dark. While I was upstairs signing my acceptance form, Harlan was printing a quitclaim deed. It's a one-page form that transfers property rights from one party to another with zero warranty of actual ownership. It's perfectly legal when used properly between trusting family members. It is a massive felony when the person signing it has absolutely no legal right to the land. He called Vance at 11:30 p.m. I've got the packet ready. We file at 9 a.m. The clerk opens at 8, but I want to make sure Eloin is distracted with birthday stuff before we leave the house. Are you absolutely sure about this, Harlan? Vance asked, his nerve failing. They're dead, Vance. We are the blood heirs. It's basic. It wasn't basic. It was fraud, masquerading as standard real estate bureaucracy. Harlan also had a second document queued up on his laptop. The binding purchase agreement with Apex Ridge Developments LLC, Purchase price, $450,000. Closing. Date, 30 days after the quitclaim was recorded. If Harlan failed to deliver a clean, unencumbered title within that 30-day window, he would personally owe Apex Ridge a strict penalty of $45,000, plus compensatory damages. He had signed that contract 2 months prior, before he ever ran a legitimate title search, before he ever verified if the property was even in probate. He just assumed. He assumed an old man hadn't outsmarted him. Harlan had bet $500,000 on a piece of paper he didn't own. And in 9 hours, when he strutted into the county clerk's office with his forged deed and a firm handshake, he was going to find a brick wall. My birthday party kicked off at 4 p.m. Our living room was packed with maybe 20 people, neighbors from Oak Creek, folks from my parents' church, 2 of Vance's old hardware suppliers, and Sutton's best friend's family. Mabel Thornton, whose lake house was next door to ours at Blackwood, was there too. She sat near the bay window, sipping lemonade, her sharp eyes missing nothing. There were helium balloons, a silver Happy 18th banner from Party City, and a massive sheet cake from the local bakery. I played the part perfectly. I smiled. I hugged people. I opened small gifts, a leather journal, a Starbucks gift card, a picture frame. Folded neatly into a tiny square in my jacket pocket was a printed copy of the trust acceptance form from last night. I didn't touch it, I didn't need to. The trap had already snapped shut. Vance stood up near the cake table and clinked his spoon against a glass. The room settled down. I just want to say how incredibly proud Lorelai and I are of Elowen. Officially. An adult today! He paused, scanning the room, soaking up the attention. And as a family, we've got some massive, exciting plans for the future. He looked right at me, flashing a brilliant, terrifying smile. Right, Elowen? Every face turned toward me. Thanks, Dad, I said blankly. I gave him nothing else. Vance hesitated, then chuckled awkwardly and raised his glass. The room murmured in agreement and went back to mingling. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Uncle Harlan hovering near the front door, aggressively typing on his iPhone with both thumbs. He looked pale. Mabel Thornton caught my arm as I walked past the window. She smelled like lavender lotion and expensive gin. She leaned in close. Your grandmother would want you to know something, she murmured. I saw your Uncle Harlan at the cabin last Tuesday. He was walking the property line with 2 guys in expensive suits, holding surveyor tape. He brought buyers onto the lot before he even possessed the deed. That's how arrogant he is. After the sheet cake was demolished and the paper plates were cleared, Vance stood up a second time. This time, he projected from his diaphragm the voice of the patriarch. Before everyone heads out, I want to share some family news. He wrapped an arm tightly around Lorelai's waist. As many of you know, our family has had a rough patch financially. The store has struggled. Sympathetic murmurs echoed from the betagram church folks. But my parents, Silas and Beatrix, left us a safety net, the Blackwood Lake cabin. And as a united family, we've made the difficult decision to sell it, to secure Sutton and Elowen's futures. We've made the decision. The words hit my skin like ice water. He was announcing the sale in front of 20 witnesses to publicly box me in, to make it a done deal. He stared directly into my eyes. Elowen understands. She knows this is the right move for all of us. Right, sweetheart? The room went dead silent. Everyone was looking at me. The neighbors who watched, let me learn to ride a bike. Mabel with her lemonade. Sutton, peeking out from behind the hallway arch. Lorelai smiled, her teeth clenched. It's what responsible families do. We sacrifice for each other. I carefully set my plastic fork down on my plate. The plastic tapping against. The paper was the loudest sound in the house. I never agreed to sell the cabin, Dad. Vance's smile remained plastered on his face, but the tendons in his neck flared. She's just overwhelmed. Birthday nerves. I'm not nervous at all, I said, my voice steady. Harlan pushed off the wall and stepped into the living room. Come on, Elowen. Don't do this now. This isn't the time or the place. I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, and set it back down. Right, Uncle Harlan. The time isn't now. I locked eyes with him. The time was 8 a.m. this morning. The silence was deafening. Harlan's phone vibrated violently against his thigh. He didn't look down. Nobody in the room breathed. The guests started filtering out rapidly after that. It was that awkward, highly polite exit people make when they realize they are trapped inside the blast. Radius of someone else's domestic war. Lovely cake. Happy birthday. Look at the time. Within 30 minutes, the house was entirely empty, except for Vance, Lorelai, Harlan, Sutton, and me. Lorelei waited until the heavy front door clicked shut. Then she spun around to face me in the kitchen. Her voice was violently controlled. Do you have any concept of what is happening right now? Your father is on the verge of losing this house. The house you sleep in every single night. And you are throwing a tantrum over a rotting wooden shack you visit on weekends? I visit it every weekend, Mom. That is irrelevant. She slammed her palms flat against the granite island. We are a family unit. Families operate as a unit. And if you actually loved us, wouldn't need some snake lawyer whispering in your ear to know what the right thing to do is. The kitchen plunged into silence. I stared at her. How do you know about my lawyer? Lorelei didn't blink. Harlan found the business card in your purse last week. Rosalind Sterling. Who the hell is she, Elowen? My stomach dropped. Not from panic, but from the visceral disgust of realizing. My own mother let my uncle dig through my personal belongings to build a case against me. Before I could fire back, Mabel Thornton's voice sliced through the tension. She hadn't left. She was standing perfectly still in the kitchen doorway. That girl has every legal right to seek counsel, Lorelei. And Beatrix would have dragged you through the mud for saying otherwise. Lorelei whipped around. This is a private family matter, Mabel. Get out of my house. Mabel didn't flinch. She looked at Lorelei, then at me. Beatrix was my dearest. Friend for 40 years. I know exactly what she wanted. The tension in the air was so thick you could choke on it. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. Not yet. Mabel finally turned and left, the screen door slamming shut behind her. Now it was just the five of us. Vance closed the kitchen door. The fluorescent overhead light hummed. He pulled out a bar stool, sat down, and folded his hands. On the counter like a mob boss dictating terms. Here is how this plays out, Elowen, he said, his voice dropping an octave. Tomorrow morning, Harlan and I are driving to the county clerk. We file the paperwork. The developer takes the property, you get your cut, and we move on. With our lives. What's my cut? I asked. 50,000 out of what? What's the total? Vance didn't answer. Harlan, leaning against the refrigerator, filled the void. Don't play hardball with us, kid. You'll lose. I looked at my dad. And if I say no? Vance's jaw ground side to side. If you sabotage this, you are entirely on your own. I pull your car insurance. Zero help with college tuition. And you find somewhere else to live by Monday. The kitchen faucet dripped. Once, twice. You're threatening to make me homeless on my 18th birthday. I am begging you to act like a member of this family, Vance roared. I pushed away from the counter and stood up straight. My voice was eerily calm. Even though my adrenaline was spiking, I am acting like a member of this family, Dad. I'm the part that actually keeps their promises. I walked past Harlan, past Sutton, who was curled up on the bottom stair with her, knees to her chest, and I walked up to my room. I locked the door, sat on my mattress, and took a shuddering breath. Vance thought his deadline was 9 a.m. at the clerk's office. He still didn't comprehend that Rosalind's deadline had been 8 a.m. I sat on my bed holding the trust paperwork I had signed the night before. My dad had just threatened to evict me if I didn't surrender a multi-million-dollar asset that was legally mine. My mom told me I didn't love them. My uncle was currently holding forged documents he planned to submit to a government official. And all I could think was that Grandma Beatrix was a prophet. She knew exactly the kind of monsters they would mutate into the second real money was on the table, and she built a fortress around me years before I even knew I needed one. If someone you loved ever set up a failsafe to protect you after they were gone, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments. Now, let me tell you about the bloodbath that happened the next morning. At exactly 8 a.m., the county clerk's office unlocked its glass doors. The fluorescent lights flickered to life. A clerk in a navy cardigan sat behind the plexiglass window. Rosalind Sterling was the very first person in line. She wore a slate gray suit, carrying a heavy leather briefcase. She stepped up to the window and slid two thick documents across the counter, a certified notarized copy of the Silas and Beatrix family, irrevocable trust, and a formal lis pendens. She requested they be legally attached to the Blackwood Lake parcel. The clerk reviewed the paperwork, cross-referenced the property identification, number in the county database, and stamped them both with heavy red ink, filed, and recorded. From that exact second, anyone pulling the deed for the cabin would be hit with a massive legal red flag. Irrevocable trust. Rosalind Sterling, co-trustee. Elowen, successor beneficiary. At 8:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Rosalind, it's done. The lis pendens is live. The title is bulletproof. Let them walk into the buzzsaw. I was sitting at the kitchen island eating a bowl of Cheerios. Vance was upstairs tying a necktie. Lorelei was brewing French roast, normal domestic. Morning sounds. The shower running. A closet door clicking shut. At 8:30 a.m., Vance and Harlan came downstairs together. Vance was wearing his bank meeting suit. Harlan had his trusty manila folder tucked securely under his arm. "We'll be back by noon," Vance called out to Lorelei, grabbing his keys off the hook. I looked up from my cereal bowl. "Good luck." Vance paused in the doorway. He stared at me. Something in my tone, or maybe the deadness in my eyes, made him hesitate. But greed won out. He turned and walked out the door. I washed my bowl, dried it, put it in the cabinet, and I waited. I will pay infinite amounts of money to see the security footage of their faces, but I know exactly what happened because Rosalind purposely stayed in the lobby of the clerk's office just to watch it go down. At 9:05 a.m., Uncle Harlan swaggered up to the clerk's counter. He slid his forged quitclaim deed across the desk with the extreme confidence of a mediocre white man. Vance stood behind him, hands in his pockets, looking at the ceiling tiles. Like it was just a trip to the DMV. The clerk took the paperwork. She typed the parcel number into her keyboard. Read the monitor. She frowned. She typed it in again. She stopped. "I cannot record this instrument, sir." Harlan leaned heavily on the counter. "Excuse me? Why not?" "The title to this parcel is currently locked under the Silas and Beatrix family. Irrevocable trust. It was deeded over in 2018. Furthermore, there was a list pendants filed against the parcel at 8 a.m. this morning." "That's impossible," Harlan scoffed, his face flushing. "My parents owned that." "Dirt free and clear. Sir, the warranty deed was transferred into a living trust 6 years ago. The chain of title is absolute. This quitclaim deed you're handing me completely contradicts the recorded ownership." Vance stepped up, elbowing Harlan aside. "There is no trust. My parents never said a damn word about a trust." The clerk looked at the two sweating, panicking men in front of her. "I highly advise you direct your grievances to the trustee of record, a Miss Rosalind Sterling." Harlan's hand slapped flat against the counter. All the blood drained from his face. The name, the exact name on the business card he had stolen from my purse, was now glaring at him from a government database, blocking a $450,000 payday. Vance turned his head toward his brother, moving like the Tin Man. "You explicitly told me this was a clean sweep. You said you ran the title." "I didn't know about a trust. Nobody knew," Harlan stammered. "You're a licensed real estate broker, Harlan. How the hell did you not pull the abstract before signing a corporate contract?" Harlan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. The clerk hit a button under her desk. "Gentlemen, if you are going to raise your voices, I need you to step outside the building." Rosalind, sitting quietly on a wooden bench near the exit, watched them stumble out onto the sidewalk. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. My phone rang at 9:22 a.m. I was sitting on the front porch, watching the neighbor's oscillating sprinkler whip back and forth across the grass. "What did you do?" Vance's voice was unrecognizable. It was a high, vibrating shriek. I could hear cars driving past. He was standing in the courthouse parking lot. "I legally accepted the inheritance Grandma and Grandpa left me, Dad. That's all. You went behind my back with some blood-sucking lawyer we've never even met. Rosalind Sterling has been on retainer for 6 years, Dad. You just never bothered to ask." A moment of pure, hyperventilating silence. "That is my parents' property. Elwyn, I am their firstborn son, and they meant for me to have it." I kept my voice dead level. "Not because they didn't love you, Dad, but because they knew they couldn't trust you." The silence that followed was the heaviest thing I've ever experienced. I literally counted the sprinkler rotations, 3 full arcs before he spoke. "Again, I'm going to sue you. I will drag this trust through probate court until it bleeds." "You can try," I replied smoothly. "But it's an irrevocable trust. That means not even I have the power to dissolve it. There is absolutely nothing you, Harlan, or a judge, can do to undo it." "You don't know what the hell you're talking about." "I do, Dad. I've had 3 entire months to study it." He hung up. No goodbye. Just a click and dial tone. I set the phone gently on the porch railing. My hands were vibrating, not from fear, but from the crushing, agonizing weight of speaking to my own father like he was a hostile corporate entity. Knowing that the man who taught me how to tie my shoes was the exact same man who had just tried to strip me of my inheritance so he could pay off his bad business loans. I sat there until the shaking stopped. It took a while. Then my phone buzzed again. An unknown New York number. A man's voice. Crisp, aggressive. "Wall Street. Elwyn, This is Harrison Tate from Apex Ridge Developments. We have a massive problem. Harrison Tate spoke exactly like a developer. Bullet points, no filler, already. Calculating his litigation costs. We hold an executed purchase agreement with Harlan for the Blackwood Lake parcel. He legally guaranteed an unencumbered title. My title agency just alerted me that a lis pendens was dropped on the parcel an hour ago. Explain this to me. My uncle does not own that property, Mr. Tate. He never has. The cabin and the acreage have been locked in an irrevocable trust since 2018. I am the sole legal beneficiary. A long, heavy pause. I heard papers shuffling in the background. He represented himself as the sole executor of the estate. I understand that, but verbal representation does not legally convey title. I highly recommend you speak to your corporate counsel. Another pause. Is there any scenario where Apex Ridge can acquire the parcel? We are prepared to make a highly aggressive cash offer directly to the trust. The property is not for sale, ever. His voice dropped 20 degrees. Understood. Then we will pursue immediate legal remedies against your uncle. I gave him Rosalind's direct office line. In less than an hour, Rosalind confirmed to Apex Ridge's legal department exactly what I had said. The trust was ironclad. Harlan had committed textbook fraud. The purchase agreement was built on a foundation of lies. Apex Ridge didn't hesitate. They instantly triggered a breach of contract. Lawsuit against Uncle Harlan. They demanded the $45,000 penalty clause, plus $60,000 in punitive damages and attorney's fees. That afternoon, Rosalind called me with the kill shot. Her voice was grave, but satisfied. Elowin, the quitclaim deed Harlan tried to submit? It had a notary stamp on it. I asked the clerk to scan a copy of it before she rejected the filing. Okay? The notary ID number doesn't exist in the state registry. He used a fake stamp. Or he bought one online. I squeezed my eyes shut. That's a felony in New York, isn't it? A Class D felony for forgery in the second degree, Rosalind confirmed. Your uncle didn't just try to steal from you. He committed a state crime to do it. Vance got home at 2 p.m. He walked through the front door looking like he had aged 20 years and 4 hours. Lorelei was already in the kitchen, arms crossed, mascara running down her cheeks from what looked like an hour of screaming into a pillow. I was sitting at the dining room table. I stood up. Vance slumped into a chair, across from me, and stared at the wood grain for a long time. I'm losing the house, Elowin, he said. His voice was entirely hollowed out. The commercial bank is calling in a $180,000 loan. The hardware store is bankrupt. That lake house was our only way out. I'm sorry your business failed, Dad. Truly. Then fix it. Sign it over. The cabin was never your life raft, Dad. It was Grandpa's gift to me. Vance laughed a dry, hacking sound. For what? You're an 8-year-old girl. What? The hell does an 8-year-old need with a premium lakefront property? It's not about what I need, it's about what they wanted. Lorelei stepped out of the kitchen. They were elderly, Elowin. They were losing their cognitive function. They weren't thinking clearly. They were thinking clearly enough to hire an estate attorney 6 years before. They died, I snapped back. Vance slammed his fist onto the table. I am taking this to probate court. I will break that trust. A voice echoed from my phone sitting on the table. I had called Rosalind before. Vance walked in and left the phone on speaker. Not to trap him, but to save us. All the agonizing back and forth. Mr. Vance, Rosalind's voice cut through the room like a scalpel, contesting a fully funded irrevocable trust established 6 years prior to the grantor's deaths, with documented psychological evaluations proving mental competency, will cost you more in billable hours than the property is even worth. You will bankrupt whatever is left of your family. I strongly advise you to drop it. The dining room went silent. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. Vance looked at me. He really looked at me. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw something in my father's eyes that I had never seen before. Not anger, defeat. 2 hours later, Harlan called the house line. Vance answered it in the living room. I stood in the hallway, close enough to hear every word through the drywall. Apex Ridge is suing me. Harlan sounded like a cornered rat. 45 grand. In breach penalties. Plus damages. They're alleging fraudulent misrepresentation. Vance's response was ice cold. You told me we owned it. I assumed. You're a realtor, Harlan. You run abstracts for a living. How do you just assume? You wanted the cash out just as bad as I did, Harlan screamed. Yeah, but I didn't forge a state notary stamp, Vance roared back. Silence on the other end. I didn't forge it. Harlan whispered weakly. I just found an old one in an office drawer. That is literal forgery, you idiot. Do you understand you are facing prison time? Harlan was hyperventilating. I need a defense attorney. So do I, Vance said flatly. Don't ever call this house again. He slammed the phone down. The plastic cracked. He collapsed onto the sofa. The springs groaned. Then, nothing. I walked upstairs. Sutton's door was cracked open. She was sitting on her bed, her AirPods hanging around her neck, her eyes wide with terror. Uncle Harlan is in trouble, isn't he? Yes, Sutton. He is. And Dad? I sat on the edge of her bed. Dad made some really bad choices. Uncle Harlan made catastrophic ones. She nodded slowly, absorbing it the way a 15-year-old does not, totally grasping the legal mechanics, but understanding enough to know the earth had opened up beneath us. I went to my room, sat by the window, and looked down at the suburban street. A guy was walking his golden retriever. A FedEx truck drove by. The world was still spinning. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like a mastermind. I felt like someone who had just crawled out of a burning building and hadn't yet checked to see how bad the third-degree burns were. Over the next 3 weeks, the dominoes fell fast, and every single one made a different really way. Sickening thud. Apex Ridge Developments formally filed their civil suit against Uncle Harlan in state court. Breach of contract, fraudulent inducement, demanding $105,000 total. Process servers slapped the papers onto his chest at a Starbucks on a Tuesday. Worse, the district attorney's office received a formal referral from the county clerk regarding the bogus notary stamp. A criminal investigator was assigned. The State Real Estate Commission instantly suspended Harlan's broker's license, pending the investigation. His income dropped to absolute zero overnight. Word spreads like wildfire in Oak Creek. Not because I talked, I didn't, but civil dockets are public record, and Apex Ridge named the Blackwood Lake parcel. In the filing, the lake house neighbors read the local paper. They gossiped. By week 2, the entire saga was the main topic at the Rotary Club, the church, parking lot, and the checkout line at Trader Joe's. The brothers tried to steal their dead parents' lake house, and the teenage granddaughter took them out at the knees. Some people thought I was a ruthless genius. Some people thought I was an ungrateful brat. I didn't correct either group. Harlan called me exactly once. I answered. Elowen, please, he begged, sounding completely broken. Can you ask your lawyer to lift the lis pendens? If the title clears, I can try to renegotiate with Apex Ridge. Get them to drop the lawsuit. The lis pendens protects my property, Uncle Harlan. It stays. Your grandparents would be disgusted with you. I let the sentence hang there. Then I spoke softly into the receiver. My grandparents are the ones who legally engineered this trap, Harlan. They chose this. They chose me. So I really don't think disgust is what they'd be feeling. I hung up. Vance didn't sue the trust. Rosalind was right. The legal retainer fee alone would have destroyed him. Instead, he did what he should have done 2 years ago. He liquidated the hardware store at a massive loss, but it was just enough capital to negotiate a survival payment plan with the commercial bank. They kept the house in Oak Creek. Their retirement savings, however, vanished. Lorelei went back to the workforce for the first time in 12 years. She took a shift manager job at a local CVS pharmacy. She didn't talk about it much. When the neighbors asked, she forced a smile and said, I just wanted to get out of the house. Nobody believed her, but nobody pressed it. Vance and I barely spoke for a month. The house operated in a state of a cold war. Mabel Thornton drove out to Oak Creek and brought me a warm apple pie. Your parents made their bed, Elowen, she said, setting the Pyrex dish on our kitchen counter. But they are still your parents. Don't carry their shame. That belongs to them. I drove out to the cabin on a Saturday morning in late April. The dogwoods lining the dirt road were in full bloom, exploding in white and pale pink against the dark water. I unlocked the front door with the exact same brass key Grandpa Silas had given me when I was 14. Just in case you ever need a place to crash, he had said. I didn't know he meant permanently. The cabin smelled exactly the same. Wood smoke, old paperbacks, and the deep, sweet scent of decades of sun and rain baked into the cedar logs. I walked through every room. The oak kitchen table was still perfectly level. Grandma's books were still color-coded. In the bottom drawer of the roll-top desk overlooking the lake, I found a thick envelope. My name was on the front in Grandpa's shaky blue ink, Rosalind told me. It would be there. He had instructed her to tell me where to look only after the dust settled. I opened it carefully. It was a single page. Elowen, I know my boys are going to try and sell this place. I don't hate them for it. Vance is my son, and I love him. But Vance never understood the difference between something that has a price tag and something that is invaluable. I chose you to hold this fort not because you're perfect, but because you were the only one who asked me if the roof needed patching before, asking me how much the acreage appraised for. Take care of her. She took care of you, Grandpa. I folded the letter, sat on the porch, and finally let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 6 years. Rosalind called the following week. Good news. The lis pendens has been officially lifted now that there is no active threat to the title. The deed shows the trust as the sole, unencumbered owner. Harlan settled with Apex Ridge out of court. He took out a massive, high-interest personal loan to pay them the $45,000 penalty. The sale is dead. And the forgery? The DA is moving forward with a misdemeanor plea deal. He avoids prison, but he gets 3 years probation, a massive fine, and his real estate license is permanently revoked. I processed that. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt exhausted. There's one more thing, Rosalind said, her tone softening. In the trust, bylaws, your grandparents established a separate educational sub-account, $50,000, strictly earmarked for your university tuition. It's been accruing compound interest for 6 years. The current balance is just over $58,000. My eyes filled with tears. $50,000, the exact same number Vance had offered me as my cut. The exact same number Harlan dangled in my face to buy my silence. My grandparents had quietly set it aside for me, without breathing a word of it to anyone. Elowen, are you there? I'm here, I choked out. Your grandparents would be incredibly proud of you. I just kept my promise, Rosalind. I enrolled at SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry that same week. The campus was only a 40-minute drive from the cabin. On the housing forms, under current address, I wrote down the Blackwood Lake address for the first time. It felt like coming home, because it was. I asked Vance and Lorelei to meet me at a neutral diner downtown. Not our house, not the cabin, public territory. They walked in together. Vance was wearing one of Grandpa Silas's old flannel shirts. Lorelei was clutching her purse against her ribs like a shield. We ordered coffees. I waited until the waitress walked away. I love you both, I said, looking right at them. I need you to hear that, because what I'm about to say won't sound like it. Lorelei's jaw tightened, but she nodded. The cabin is not for sale. Not today, not in 10 years. I will never allow you to guilt-trip me for keeping a promise I made to a dying woman. A promise she trusted me with, because she knew for a fact that neither of you would honor it. Vance stared deeply into his black coffee. I am not cutting you out of my life, I continued. But if we are going to have a relationship moving forward, it has to be built on actual respect, not on what financial bailout I can provide you, not on some twisted loyalty where I owe you. My future, because you gave me life. Lorelei opened her mouth. We just wanted what was best. Then start by being honest. I cut her off. You tried to fence a property you didn't own. You threatened to kick me out on my 18th birthday. You let a felon dig through my purse. She snapped her mouth shut. Vance slowly lifted his head. His voice was hoarse. I don't know how to fix this, Elowen. You don't have to fix it today, I said, standing up. I dropped a $20 bill on the table to cover the coffees. I'll call you on Sunday. Vance gave a tiny, broken nod. I walked out into the sunlight. It was the absolute maximum I could offer them. Right now, and it had to be enough. Sutton drove out to the cabin on a Sunday afternoon in May. She brought a greasy, cardboard box of pepperoni pizza and was wearing the exact same oversized hoodie she'd had since 8th grade. Brought lunch, she said, dropping the box on the porch table. We sat outside with paper plates on our laps. The lake was glass. A blue heron was standing stock still in the shallows near the dock, waiting for a silver flash under the water. I didn't know about any of it, Sutton finally mumbled, picking off a pepperoni. Mom and Dad never told me what Harlan was doing. I know, Sutton. I know you didn't. I looked at her. 15 years old. Narrow shoulders. She didn't ask to be the golden child. She didn't know the designer desk lamps and lavender paint were bought with borrowed time and bad debt. You were a kid, I told her. We both were. She nodded, tearing off a crust. It's really beautiful out here, she whispered, looking across the water. Grandma used to say the exact same thing every time she sat in that chair. Sutton looked at the empty wicker chair next to me. Grandpa's chair, the one with the armrest he had sanded down to buttery perfection, Can I come back? Sometime? Whenever you want. She leaned her head on my shoulder for just a second, then sat up and took a bite of pizza. We didn't talk about our parents. We didn't talk about irrevocable trusts or forged notary stamps or civil lawsuits. We talked about her AP Bio project, the Blue Heron, and whether the dock needed treating this summer. The cabin didn't just protect a piece of real estate, it made a safe space for something new to grow. Early June, 6 a.m. I am sitting on the porch with a mug of black coffee, watching the morning fog burn off Blackwood Lake. A loon calls out somewhere across the water. Too long, haunting notes, then silence. I didn't win against my family. There is no winning when the people who hurt. You are the exact people who were biologically wired to protect you. You don't get a gold medal for surviving a betrayal that never should have happened in the first place. But I kept my promise, and for the first time in my life, I am standing on ground that belongs entirely to me. Not because I violently fought for it, but because two people loved me enough to orchestrate this exact outcome. They saw the hurricane coming. They built the fallout shelter before I even knew the sky was turning green. My grandparents couldn't stop Vance from being desperate. They couldn't stop Lorelei from being complicit. They couldn't stop Harlan from chasing money that wasn't his. But they made absolutely sure that when the floor gave out, I had solid rock to land on. I think about the letter in my desk, Grandpa's words about the difference between a price tag and value. This cabin has both, but my family spent 2 years hallucinating over the wrong one. I take a sip of my coffee. The fog lifts, and the lake turns a brilliant, deep blue. If you are listening to this, and you feel like absolutely nobody is in your corner, I need you to hear me. Sometimes, the people protecting you aren't standing right in front of you. Sometimes, they laid the armor out for you years ago, in total silence. And sometimes, all you have to do is survive long enough to show up, sign your name, and keep the promise. Peace doesn't come from nuclear revenge. It comes from standing on a foundation that cannot be shaken and knowing you can finally start building your life on it. That is my story. If it made you feel something furious, relieved, validated, or just a little less crazy in your own family dynamic, then it did exactly what I hoped it would. Now, I have a question for you guys. If you could establish an ironclad trust to protect one single thing in your life, a place, a person, a memory, a promise, what would it be? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to. Hear it today. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to have you around for the next one. Check the description for more stories, just like this. Stay safe out there.